Millions of tourists walk across the stunning sun-drenched plazas of Lisbon every single year.
Wow, easily millions.
Right. You take photos of the towering medieval architecture, you grab a warm pastel de nata from a corner bakery, and you just sort of marvel at the sheer beauty of Portugal's capital.
It really is an incredibly beautiful city.
It is. But what almost none of those millions of visitors realize is that as they cross those picturesque cobblestones, they are standing directly on the epicenter of the first global systemic slave trade.
Yeah, it's a really profound disconnect when you think about it.
A huge disconnect.
You have this modern city heavily marketed as a relaxing European paradise, right? An escape filled with yellow trams and great wine.
Exactly, the whole vacation vibe.
Right. Yet physically baked into the very stones of that city is a legacy of human commodification that literally reshaped the entire world.
Well, welcome to another deep dive. Today we were looking past those glossy travel brochures.
Way past them.
Yeah, we are exploring the hidden, significantly heavier history of Lisbon through the lens of a highly acclaimed walking tour.
And this isn't your standard sightseeing stroll either.
No, not at all. It's not where someone just points at a statue and tells you what year it was cast. This is a dedicated, intensive exploration of the Atlantic slave trade and African history in Portugal.
And while you might assume a topic like that would be, I don't know, super niche, the data we are looking at paints a completely different picture.
It really does. Travelers are actively seeking out this specific confrontation with history.
We actually have a fascinating stack of sources to guide us today, don't we?
Yes, we do. We are pulling from an extensive collection of traveler reviews and tour data straight from TripAdvisor.
Specifically for a provider called My Lisbon Tours, right?
Exactly. And to get the operational side of things, we are also digging into detailed booking metrics and itinerary notes from an ExcursionPass listing.
And synthesizing those two data sets reveals something incredible.
It's wild. You have a 3-hour walking tour centered entirely on trauma, on subjugation, and a deeply painful past.
Yeah.
Yet it is consistently, almost uniformly, rated a 5 out of 5.
Which is practically unheard of for something so heavy.
That is the core mystery we need to solve today.
Yeah.
Why is a walking tour about such a dark and sensitive topic frequently selling out?
Right.
And more importantly, why are everyday tourists describing a rigorous exploration of the slave trade as the absolute highlight of their otherwise relaxing vacations? Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, to understand the phenomenon, we really have to look at the physical reality of the tour itself. And, of course, the individual responsible for guiding people through it.
The guide is crucial here.
Oh, absolutely. Because you cannot just dump this level of historical weight on a group of strangers without a masterful anchor.
So let's ground this in the actual experience. According to the ExcursionPass and TripAdvisor listings, you are signing up for a 3-hour walking journey.
Right. But crucially, this is strictly a small group experience.
Yeah, capping out at a maximum of 8 people.
Which immediately signals a departure from the typical European tour model, you know?
Oh, for sure. Nobody is marching you around with a brightly colored umbrella.
Shouting through a megaphone to a crowd of 40 people.
Exactly. It's not that at all.
The structure itself demands intimacy, and the geography of the route is incredibly deliberate, too.
Oh, tell me about it. You don't start in a sterile museum somewhere.
No, you start down at Largo de Chafariz de Dentro.
Standing right in front of a medieval fountain.
Yes. And from there, you are woven through the historic, everyday quarters of Lisbon.
Districts like the Alfama and Baixa.
Right. Until you eventually emerge into the famous Rocio Square. It forces the listener to realize that this history didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened right here on these exact streets.
And frankly, the barrier to entry is shockingly low. The listings show it priced around $38.
For roughly €30 on ExcursionPass, yeah, for an adult.
But across every single source we reviewed, the cost, or even the specific route, is totally secondary to one dominant factor.
The guide.
The guide. Almost every review aggressively centers on one specific guide, a man named Rui Fernandes.
He is undeniably the linchpin of the whole thing.
I mean, they rave about him.
They really do. Travelers consistently describe his demeanor using phrases like quiet confidence. He's called a walking encyclopedia.
Which I love.
Right. He isn't performing history, he's translating it.
I have to pause here, though, and, play devil's advocate for you, the listener.
Okay, go for it.
Let's say you are planning a trip to Lisbon. You've worked hard all year, you have 5 days to unwind, and you just want to feel good.
Sure, you want a vacation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why on earth would you dedicate 3 hours of your limited vacation time to a topic steeped in such profound human suffering?
It's a fair point.
Doesn't confronting the atrocities of the slave trade completely derail the vibe of a holiday?
It is a totally reasonable hesitation, but I think it fundamentally misunderstands what the tour is actually doing.
How so?
Well, what's fascinating here is that reviewers explicitly state this experience provides the missing puzzle pieces to the city itself.
Missing puzzle pieces.
Yeah, you cannot genuinely understand Lisbon's grand architecture or its maritime dominance in the 15th and 16th centuries without this context.
You mean its global colonial footprint?
Exactly. You can't understand any of that without understanding the economic engine that built it.
Right. Because the immense wealth required to build those sweeping plazas and those ornate monasteries, it didn't just manifest out of thin air.
No, it didn't.
It wasn't just because Portuguese explorers were really good at sailing.
Precisely. The so-called Age of Discovery was entirely bankrolled by human extraction.
Wow.
And what travelers highlight in their reviews is that Rui doesn't just tell sad stories about enslaved individuals, he maps out the systemic nature of the trade.
So he goes beyond the individual tragedies.
Right? The tour examines the governing bodies, the royal decrees, and even the everyday slaveholders who lived in the very buildings you are walking past.
Oh, that's heavy. So it's the difference between looking at a beautiful skyscraper and being handed the blueprints that show exactly whose labor was exploited to pour the foundation.
That's a perfect analogy. It
Yeah.
strips away the mythology of the brave explorer.
And replaces it with the stark reality of a global supply chain.
Yes, and that completely recontextualizes the ground you are standing on. You are no longer just a passive consumer of pretty architecture.
You're suddenly literate in the invisible economic forces that shape the modern world.
Exactly.
But practically speaking, that brings up a massive logistical challenge, doesn't it?
What do you mean?
Well, we know Rui has this quiet confidence, but how is he actually managing such volatile, emotionally charged material in real time?
It's not easy.
Right. You are standing in the middle of a noisy, bustling European capital with a diverse group of tourists who might hold completely different worldviews.
They employ some very smart pedagogical tools to handle that, actually. First, to maintain that crucial intimacy in a loud city, the tour utilizes audio devices.
Which feels absolutely essential.
It really is.
Imagine the indignity of a guide having to scream over a passing delivery truck to explain the horrors of the Middle Passage.
Yeah, that would completely ruin the tone. Using earpieces allows Rui to speak at a normal, respectful volume. It preserves the gravity of the subject matter.
It creates this, private auditory bubble for the group while they navigate public spaces.
Exactly. But the real magic of his facilitation is how he handles human friction.
Oh, right.
There's an incredibly revealing anecdote from one of the TripAdvisor reviewers, user GH222.
I know exactly the review you're talking about.
Yeah.
A traveler noted that during their specific tour, Rui shared a historical image with the group, and another tourist actually spoke up and said they found the image to be offensive.
Now, just think about that dynamic for a second.
It sounds so stressful.
On a standard sightseeing tour, that is a catastrophic moment. The guide would likely panic, apologize profusely.
Or just awkwardly hustle the group to the next statue just to diffuse the tension.
Right, anything to avoid conflict. But Rui leans into it.
He does.
Yeah, the reviewer noted that he handled the situation with total grace. He actually used that friction as a teaching moment.
That is brilliant.
He builds in scheduled stops where the group is actively encouraged to dissect these uncomfortable feelings.
Because feeling offended or uncomfortable is part of the historical reckoning.
Exactly. This is where we see the line between simply reciting history and facilitating history.
Right, reciting is just reading dates off a card.
But facilitating, which Rui seems to have completely mastered, is creating a container where people can safely process their own reactions to dark truths.
Wait, that makes me wonder, though, what kind of preconceptions are tourists actually bringing to a tour like this?
A lot, honestly.
Are people showing up with a completely sanitized version of history in their heads?
Absolutely they are. Many education systems globally just completely gloss over Portugal's central role as the pioneer of the Atlantic slave trade.
Yeah, people often associate the trade primarily with the Americas or the British Empire.
Right, so Rui is constantly having to dismantle those foundational myths in real time. Another reviewer, Janice F., specifically praised him for this.
What did they say?
They mentioned how Rui clears up false preconceptions without ever underplaying the sheer scale and gravity of the atrocity.
One traveler actually suggested that future tourists bring a physical notepad and pen because the sheer density of mind-blowing facts is so high.
A notepad on vacation.
I mean, when was the last time you went on a leisure vacation and thought, I really need to take notes right now?
It just points to the intense intellectual rigor of the experience. And Rui doesn't let the history stay trapped in the past either.
How does he bring it forward?
Well, multiple sources note how he explicitly correlates the mechanics of Portugal's historical slave trade to the contemporary issues of race, inequality, and systemic bias we are living with today.
Oh, wow. So he bridges the gap between a 16th century decree and 21st century reality.
He does.
But if we pull back and look at the psychology of the tours for a minute, if the tour is this rigorous, this intellectually demanding, and this unflinchingly honest, how does it avoid completely crushing the participants?
That's the real challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, if I spend 3 hours in a foreign city deeply analyzing systemic historical trauma, my instinct might be to go back to my hotel room, close the blinds, and just stare at the ceiling.
You're hitting on the fundamental risk of what academia calls dark tourism.
Right.
If a historical experience is nothing but an onslaught of tragedy and victimization, it becomes emotionally exhausting.
It can actually be disempowering.
Exactly. Leaving the visitor feeling guilty and helpless rather than educated.
Yeah, it can feel almost voyeuristic if it's not handled correctly.
But the ExcursionPass itinerary notes reveal how this tour avoids that trap. It has incredible thematic breadth.
Meaning it covers more than just the suffering.
Right. The narrative arc doesn't just start and stop with the brutalization of enslaved people. It covers the origins of the trade, yes, but it pushes forward into Brazil, the complex mechanics of the abolition movement, and heavily features the African liberation movements.
So it's not just a story of subjugation, it's a story of resistance.
Exactly. One traveler, under the username onair54663850521, specifically wrote their review to assure future guests that the tour is not all doom and gloom.
That's a relief.
They emphasized how Rui intentionally weaves in documented stories of perseverance, agency, and ultimate triumph against the colonial systems.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Yeah.
When you read through the stack of TripAdvisor feedback, multiple people cryptically mention the very end of the tour.
Ah, yes.
They're careful not to spoil it, but they say it concludes with an unexpected revelation and a deeply personal touch.
It is a masterful structural choice.
It requires such a high level of emotional intelligence to design an experience that way.
It really does.
To know you are deliberately walking people into a very dark psychological space, and to engineer a specific off-ramp back into the light at the very end.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is really the only ethical way to teach this material.
I agree completely.
Confronting dark history shouldn't solely be an exercise in producing guilt. It must be about honoring the humanity of the people who lived it, who suffered, and who eventually fought back.
Yes.
By ending on a note of African liberation and offering a personal revelation, Rui provides the psychological release the group desperately needs.
It transforms the subject from a crushing burden into an empowering awakening.
And the care for the tourist's experience doesn't end when the tour officially concludes in Rossio Square either.
No, it doesn't.
The ExcursionPass data highlights that Rui provides practical, responsible recommendations for how to navigate the rest of your stay.
Yes. The aftercare is basically built right in. One reviewer mentioned that Rui directed them to a highly rated local African restaurant for dinner that evening.
Just think about the impact of that.
It's brilliant. You spend the afternoon wrestling with the heavy history of the African diaspora in Lisbon, and your homework is to go break bread at a local African-owned business.
You get to taste the immense culinary influence that those marginalized communities brought to Portugal.
Exactly. You are actively celebrating the culture that survived and is thriving today.
It grounds all the historical theory you just learned into a tangible, present-day appreciation. It moves the tourist from passively observing history to actively participating in the modern community.
So we've established that the guide is exceptional,
Yeah.
the pedagogy is deeply interactive, and the emotional arc is profoundly cathartic.
It hits all the marks.
But because this history is so deeply embedded in the physical layout of Lisbon, those famous 7 hills walking, it's really the only way to truly feel it.
Which brings us to the physical realities for you, the listener, if you actually want to do this.
Right. The terrain is a real factor. While the mental pacing of the tour is slow and thoughtful, you are still navigating a medieval city for 3 hours.
The listing is very transparent about it. Travelers need a moderate physical fitness level.
The ground is notoriously uneven, entirely cobbled, and there are significant inclines. It is definitely not a theme park.
And because of the historic infrastructure, the tour is unfortunately not wheelchair accessible.
Which is a common limitation in Lisbon's oldest district, sadly.
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
However, the data notes that strollers are permitted, and many families do actually bring their children to participate in this education.
But perhaps the most surprising logistical detail is the value proposition.
Oh, absolutely.
In the current landscape of European tourism, where a generic, pre-recorded audio tour on a crowded double-decker bus can easily run you $80.
Easily $80.
Right, you're getting 3 hours with a master facilitator for under $40.
It really defies the typical economics of travel. You are receiving what basically amounts to a university-level historical synthesis, tailored to your own questions and reactions, for the price of a mid-range lunch.
So what does this all mean? Why did we spend a deep dive analyzing a single walking tour in Portugal?
Because it represents a fundamental shift in what travel can actually be.
If you are someone who cringes at superficial tourism, the kind where you just check off landmarks, take a selfie, and leave without ever understanding the soil you are standing on, this approach is your antidote.
But engaging with a tour like this requires a willingness for you to step outside your comfort zone.
It definitely asks something of you.
You have to be brave enough to look at the incredibly ugly parts of human history right alongside the beautiful facades.
Yeah.
But the reward for that discomfort is immense. You gain a multi-dimensional, honest understanding of how the world was actually built.
You stop operating as a blind tourist, and you become a truly informed traveler.
It entirely changes the way you walk through the world.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the hidden history of Lisbon and the legacy of the Atlantic slave trade.
It's been quite the journey.
We want to thank you for joining us to unpack a topic that is undoubtedly heavy, but absolutely vital. It proves that a vacation doesn't just have to be an escape from reality. It can be a profound engagement with it.
This raises an important question, though, because the dynamics we discussed today aren't just isolated to Lisbon.
No, they really aren't. So we want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today.
Exactly.
The next time you walk through any beautiful historic city, whether you are traveling abroad or just taking a stroll through the oldest neighborhood in your very own hometown, take a long, hard look at the grand plazas, the towering ancient churches, and the magnificent government buildings.
And ask yourself, who actually built this?
Whose extracted labor funded those bricks? And what invisible history are you walking right over, simply because there isn't a bronze plaque there to tell you the truth?
History is always beneath our feet. Sometimes we just need to be brave enough to look down.
Until next time, keep digging deeper.